Welcome to Authentic English Podcast, your weekly show where education meets recreation. Here's your host with 20 years plus of teaching experience, Marcia Pike.
Marcia Pike here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Authentic English Podcast episode. I hope I didn't scare you off last week with all the terminology and grammar explanation about phrasal verbs. Well, I guess if you're here again, it's a good sign. Welcome back. If it's your first time tuning in today, go back and listen to episode 2 right now, okay? As I mentioned last week, I wasn't able to cover all the phrasal verbs I used in episode 2 because of time constraint. I want to keep each episode down to 15 minutes. I was going to move on to a different topic today, but as phrasal verbs are so important and so challenging for English learners, I've decided to do part 2, My Journey and Phrasal Verbs, the sequel. Let's quickly recap so that we can dive in. There are 2 types of phrasal verbs, transitive and intransitive. Transitive phrasal verbs require direct object to make the idea complete, who or what, while intransitive phrasal verbs do not. The idea is complete. Transitive phrasal verbs can be broken down into 2 types, separable and inseparable. In inseparable phrasal verbs, the verb and the particle cannot be separated, whereas in separable phrasal verbs, the verb and the particle can be separated. Let's go over the examples I used in my podcasting and video podcasting journey in episode 2. Since then, I've spent countless hours looking into all the technical part. The phrasal verb look into means to examine carefully, investigate. The structure for this phrasal verb is verb, particle, noun, which means that it's transitive. You need a direct object. And inseparable. You cannot separate the verb and the particle. Therefore, you cannot say, I've spent countless hours looking all the technical part into. I spent several hours looking everything up on the internet, and I had to start from scratch. Which equipment to buy, how to set it up, which programs to use. In this sentence, there are 2 phrasal verbs. Let's explore the phrasal verb look up first. The phrasal verb look up means to try to find a piece of information by looking in a book or on a computer. It is transitive and separable. I could have also said, I've spent several hours looking everything up on the internet. Or, I've spent several hours looking it up on the internet. For those of you who went to school in the 80s and 90s or before then, you probably remember going to the library to look things up in the encyclopedia back in the day. For those of you who are younger, you have no idea what I'm talking about, right? Nowadays, we look things up on the internet. You can say, look it up on the internet or Google it. Yes, Google has become a verb. When you look something up on YouTube, you can also say, let's YouTube it. Yes, it is also a verb. Anyway, let's go back to the next phrasal verb. The second phrasal verb in this sentence is set up. This phrasal verb means to build a structure or to put it in a particular place. The phrasal verb set up is transitive and separable. I could have also said how to set up the equipment or how to set the equipment up. Then I said, it's really been a lot to take in. The phrasal verb take in means to understand, to comprehend. It's an intransitive phrasal verb, therefore the idea is complete. After looking into all the tech part, I thought through meaningful topics and I focused on coming up with interesting ideas for the show. Here I use 2 phrasal verbs that we've already discussed previously, look into and come up with. However, let's explore the phrasal verb think through. It means to carefully consider the possible results of doing something. It's a transitive and separable phrasal verb. I could have also said, I thought them through. Therefore, this sentence means, after examining all the tech part, I carefully considered meaningful topics and I focused on creating interesting ideas for the show. I also brainstormed the best way to get the ideas across clearly to you. The phrasal verb get across means to succeed in communicating an idea or information to someone. The structure for this phrasal verb is verb, noun, particle. I really want to hear from you. I do my best to have interesting topics and to get the ideas across clearly. This show is for you, so please send me feedback, comments, and questions for future episodes, okay? Going on to the next phrasal verb. I've gone through so many different emotions in this journey. Pure excitement, thrill, discomfort, anxiety, fear. The phrasal verb go through means to experience a particular process. It's transitive and inseparable. Therefore, you cannot say, I've gone so many different emotions through. I worried just by wondering how I was going to come across in audio and video. If someone or what they're saying comes across in a particular way, they make that impression on people who meet them or are listening to them. The phrasal verb come across is intransitive. You can also use come across as. For example, although very confident, Brittany comes across as a shy person in job interviews. I was so nervous before recording that first episode that I actually thought of not calling it off because I really wanted to do the project, but I actually thought of putting it off. There are two phrasal verbs in this sentence, call off and put off. If you call off an event that has been planned, you cancel it. If you put something off, you delay or postpone doing it. They are both transitive and separable phrasal verbs. I could have also said, I thought of calling off or putting off the project. Or, I thought of calling the project off. I thought of putting the project off. These two phrasal verbs are commonly used at work. I'm sure you've had to call off and put off meetings before, haven't you? The next time that something comes up at work, instead of saying cancel and postpone, why don't you say call off and put off? I'm sure your boss will be pleasantly surprised and impressed. Moving on to the next phrasal verb. I talked it over with my brother and I realized that I was freaking out and I decided to follow through. In this sentence, there are three phrasal verbs. Let's go over the first one, talk over. If you talk something over with someone, you discuss it with them thoroughly and honestly. The phrasal verb talk over is transitive and separable. I could have also said, after talking over my project with my brother, or after talking my project over with my brother. The second phrasal verb in the sentence is freak out. I realized that I was freaking out. If someone freaks you out, you become so angry, surprised, excited, or frightened that you cannot control yourself. The way I used it in this sentence, freak out is an intransitive phrasal verb. It can also be a transitive separable phrasal verb. For example, I freaked out my mom when I gave her the bad news. Or, I freaked my mom out. Or, I freaked her out. The last phrasal verb in the sentence is follow through. I decided to follow through. Follow through means to continue doing something until it has been completed. Follow through is an intransitive phrasal verb. The idea is complete. I've been really looking forward to this moment. The phrasal verb look forward to means to feel happy and excited about something that is going to happen. It's a transitive and inseparable phrasal verb. Like I've said, I really look forward to hearing from you. Notice how you can also use look forward to plus the verb in the ing form. In my website, there's a place for you to leave your comments. Go to AuthenticEnglishPodcast.com and click on an episode. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and you'll see a section where you can leave your comments. Don't worry, your email address will not be published, okay? I really do look forward to hearing from you. Now, let's move on to the next phrasal verb. Although this is really out of my comfort zone, I feel that all the hard work and mixed feelings have paid off. If something you do pays off, it is successful or has a good result. Pay off is an intransitive phrasal verb. On next week's episode, I'm going to come back to today's episode and I'm going to explore one of the grammar points. Okay, I'll let you in on one of them, phrasal verbs. The phrasal verb let in on means to tell something that is secret or only known by a few people. It is a transitive and inseparable phrasal verb. Moving on to the last phrasal verb. When you listen and or watch this episode again, try to figure out what the other grammar point is. If you figure out a solution to a problem or the reason for something, you succeed in solving it or understanding it. The phrasal verb figure out is transitive and separable. I could have also said, try to figure it out. What is your go-to behavior when you have a problem? Do you usually think it through by yourself, talk it over with someone, or figure it out by yourself? You see, 3 phrasal verbs all at once. Well, that's a wrap for phrasal verbs. If you want to go that extra mile, email me at marcia@AuthenticEnglishPodcast.com for a free transcript of today's episode. On a final note, I want to give a shout out to Henrique Diniz from São Paulo, Brazil. Henrique is the 3rd winner of the Skype class giveaway. I'm going to have one more Skype class giveaway on Friday, January 26th. If you have already subscribed, no need to subscribe again. But if you haven't, just go to AuthenticEnglishPodcast.com/giveaways to subscribe and be eligible. Good luck. Well, I hope you have a great week. Take care.
Great having you with us today. Keep on with Marcia on social media. Head over to AuthenticEnglishPodcast.com to practice what you've just learned. And subscribe, rate, and review. Take care.